everyone, my name is Amber.
And I'm Jasma. Welcome back to another episode of the Off the Charts podcast. This is the podcast where we speak with experienced artists and hear more about their journey to get into where they are today.
So to start it off, we're finally back. We know you missed us. We did take a little bit of a hiatus, so sorry about that. We're so excited though to be back, and we're welcoming Miss Keesha Chung on the podcast today. We're so excited. Keesha is a filmmaker, content creator, model, and creative based in Toronto, who has so many ties in the entertainment industry. She's got so many hands in different hats, and we're so excited to kind of delve into it all and hear a little bit more about what she's done. So Keesha, how you doing? How's today going for you?
I'm good. How are you both doing?
We're doing
good. Are we all staying hydrated and eating balanced meals? Hopefully, it's been a tough time for us all, but we're back. So
yeah, and it's nice that it's kind of warm now. It's getting a little warm, feeling like spring, So I'm doing much better now.
Toronto's finally warming up a little bit.
Yeah, so it's good. I'm happy that it's this time of year again, and everything feels like it's getting to some semblance of normal. So I'm good.
Amazing, awesome. So we're gonna get started right off the bat by talking about Gray Area, because personally, this is the thing I've been most excited to talk to you about because it's been so incredible to see. So this is Keesha's first film that she wrote, produced, and directed that came out recently, and it's been doing so well in festivals. So many festival selections, that is amazing. So talk to us a little bit about how that process was like and seeing kind of all the reaction now that you're getting all these selections and seeing all the hard work come to life.
Honestly, it's been really... I wouldn't say overwhelming, but it's been a little bit intense in the best ways possible. I put so much work into it. The crew, the cast put so much work and time into it, and watching, it be received so well by the people that I created it for was just a really exciting experience. And it feels like, I keep saying it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Like, I'm like, oh, we got into another festival. Oh, we got into another festival. Like, oh guys, yay, there's another one. And it's almost like I've never done a project, like a film project to this stage. So I've like produced stuff, I've directed things, like music videos and stuff, but I've never done something where we're doing festival runs, and all the work that's involved in that I just didn't really know about. So that side of it was a little bit overwhelming for me to be like, okay, so this is why this is a job for somebody else. Like, this is why you hire someone to take care of this half of the process. But honestly, I'm just really grateful that the community has supported it and that it's been so well received. It makes me feel really good, and like I'm on the right path, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which feels really good. So
yeah, that's amazing. And what was it like, actually getting started with the project and doing it? Because actually Jasmine and myself most recently worked on something not of the same scale and nature, something similar, and oh my gosh, it's stressful, like doing all that. So I mean, being at the head of it all, it must have been a lot, trying to kind of get everyone in order and figure everything out.
Yeah, I think for me, I get bored easily. So I like doing multiple things. That's kind of how my brain works. When I think of ideas, they usually have multiple facets to them. So for me, doing this project, it was definitely a lot of work, and I'm not going to downplay it and say it was easy, but it was a challenge that was really indicative of where I was at that time, and I did learn that moving forward, I don't like directing and producing at the same time, at least not on my own, because I find when you do that, it's like, especially when you're on set, like producing leading up to it's fine, but on the day of, as a producer, you have to think about, when's the food coming? Where is everybody? Is everything good with like the equipment? Like, and then as a director, you're thinking, okay, creatively, how am I going to get the shot? How am I going to get the actors to deliver X, Y, Z? You know what I mean? So I find that, when you do both of those alone, it can be really daunting. And I had to like literally be like, okay, take director hat off, producer mode. Where's this? Da, 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 da. So the film that I did after that hasn't come out yet, I got somebody to help produce it with me. So I still produced it, but on the day of, I didn't have to think about any of the production stuff. I was like just directing and they were producing. So I really learned that lesson doing that project. And, I guess also learning when to ask for help. I think that was something that film really taught me, is like, I'm very accustomed to doing things myself. And Gray Area was, like I said, it was indicative of where I was, and it showed me what I'm capable of, but it also showed me that I don't have to do everything. It's good to get help sometimes,
And I'm curious to hear, because it was so ambitious for your first film to take on so many different roles. Was there something that you did enjoy doing all of those, having the perspective of, 3 different aspects of behind the scenes doing the film? Was there something that you learned that you would definitely carry on with you for the rest of the projects you do?
I really like having creative control over things. I think it sounds kind of weird when I say it. I was like, should I say that? But it's true. I like to have.
No, it doesn't. It's so true.
We understand.
I like it. Like, I like, with writing, that's something that can be very solitary, but it can also be something that's done collaboratively. And with this film, I had a lot of people helping me, giving me input, but I was able to really insert myself into the film in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do if maybe I had other writers be a part of it. And then with producing, that's like all the organizing. Who am I bringing together for this project? How am I going to make this come to life? And who are the best people to bring on board for that? And then how are we going to execute it? And then directing, it's like you're creatively now actualizing what the writer put on paper. And I'm the writer, so I know what I want, So I guess to answer your question, I think finding ways where I can be a part of the different stages of developing a project is always ideal for me, because that's really what it was. The writing is the kind of first big part, then the production, then directing. And I also have a director's cut that I edited of the film, so I also did that as well. And I kind of knew what I wanted for my vision. So when I was working with the editor, I looked through every single thing that we had, every shot. I made my notes and I knew what I wanted. And then I kind of gave him a base of what I was looking for, and I let him add his creative flair, because he's a professional editor, but I guess all of those things combined taught me that I enjoy being a part of multiple stages of the process, and maybe moving forward when I work on other projects, finding places where I can learn a bit more about different sides, like writing. I'd love to learn more about how other people write and collaborating with people in that sense, because the other stages of the film, I got to collaborate a lot more. But the writing, it was really like me and then getting people's feedback. But I've never written a screenplay with someone before. So I'd love to do that. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that sounds like so much work. Full on respect for that. So
does that mean we're getting a director's cut though of Gray Area? I feel like that needs to happen.
I don't know if I'll.
Is there?
It's a lot longer. It's a lot longer, and I don't know. I don't know if
we'll take the extra minutes. We'll take the extra minutes.
And it's not color corrected or mixed properly, so maybe maybe one day.
If you mentioned color correcting, I'm gonna call her Jasmine right now, because she when we did this project, she's insane with color correcting. So I think that's the only reason she will say that. Maybe not with the director's cut, she'll understand that, because she's like, that's the one thing I will tell her right now.
It's really funny, because at one point in my career, I actually was convinced I was going to be like a color grader. I was convinced. I'm like, I love this. This is so cool. Yeah, I was like literally convinced.
That's so niche.
I know. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get all the equipment, and I started researching it, and then I started looking at the actual software to do it. I did it very basically in Premiere and whatnot, and then I was like, oh my god, okay, I'm gonna get the DaVinci, I'm gonna learn how to do all this stuff. And then I started using it, and I was like, there's literally no way I could do this. This is crazy, and so much work. And so I'm very detail oriented, but color grading, that's and it changes a film so much, and that's what I kind of love about film too, is there's so many details and so many people involved in putting it together. It's not just one person. You can't do it alone. And that's what I love about it as a medium, So there's so many different jobs you can try. And I've done, like I said, I did editing, and then I was editing, color grading, I'm going to be in this side of it. And then I was like, no, directing. That's more fun. So.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little and talk about kind of what I assume would be the inspiration behind this film, because Gray Area is talking about kind of the story of a young model, which was the start of your career. You were a professional model, and I wanted to kind of hear about that experience and what it was like, and were you kind of happy with the fact that was the beginning of your career, and if there were things that you learned from that you kind of take into film now, not just as the story, but kind of the work ethic or kind of scheduling or dealing with people in that industry?
That's a good question. I honestly wouldn't be the type of director I am, or even producer I am, if I didn't start with modeling, because it gave me a really good foundation. It showed me what it's like being in front of the camera, and I think it's like when you watch a director who was a cinematographer first, you can see that their ability to capture certain things is a bit different because of what their background is, so for me, it's modeling allows me to understand what a performer's experience is in a different way that I think really helps me. but it also taught me the fundamentals of even like producing, because when you're doing a photo shoot, you know, you see the call sheets, you see who's doing what, and I used to pay attention to that stuff a lot. You know, that's really how I decided I wanted to move into another space behind the camera, was because I was at a photo shoot. I hated what I was wearing, didn't like my makeup, and I was like, okay, well, I can't really say anything because I'm a model, so let me look at who's making the decisions. And it was the producers and the directors that were there, you know, and that made me realize that that's where I want to be. So modeling not only gave me that, like, I guess, first look into the industry in that way, but it also gave me some very foundational skills that I carry with me throughout my career now. And it also helped me build my network. I met a lot of people, like makeup artists, hairdressers, costume designers, stylists, photographers that, you know, have been instrumental and helped me to get to where I am today. So it was a really important time in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's funny because so you did your modeling, and then you actually went to Concordia. You got a Bachelor of Arts in Women's Studies, and then you went to Humber for their film program. So what was the, I guess, decision for getting those two different degrees? And I know it's what's it called, very common for creatives to get different kinds of degrees. And we've talked to a lot of people who said they ended up taking a degree in something other than the film-related path because they wanted a different kind of outlook on whatever kind of, you know, field of work they're doing in the arts. So did you find that was helpful to you in that way?
It's funny because the two degrees are a lot more connected than people might realize. So what happened was I was taking a class called Visual Ethnography when I was doing my women's studies degree, and I kind of always knew I wanted to study film, well, particularly TV. I'm more of a TV person than a movie person. Like, I love TV shows. I don't watch a lot of movies. But I was taking this visual ethnography class, and the assignment was to create a documentary on a specific community that you chose. And we had to use this research skills that we had learned in the class and then create a visual documentary. So when I did that project, I ended up doing it on the modeling world, and I interviewed a bunch of people and I put it together. And that was my first real film project, was through that class. And I remember at the time I was kind of in this place where I was like learning about feminism, and I decided that I wanted to focus it on media and how media affects, you know, racism, how it perpetuates homophobia and sexism and all that stuff, right? So as I was focusing my studies on that, I decided that I wanted to use this documentary as an opportunity to kind of interrogate that part of my life in the modeling world and some of the experiences I had. So I interviewed people, but I also spoke, and I put a lot of myself into this documentary. And I remember when we had to present it, I was like shaking. Like, I was so nervous and I was so scared because I was like thinking to myself, who's gonna like have empathy for me, like this like model talking about her experiences in this industry and how hard it is to like be paid to be pretty and la 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 la. And then we showed it, and I remember after I left the room and I was like in tears because it was like I was being very vulnerable on this thing. And afterwards, a few of my classmates came up to me and they were like, Keesha, like, your piece resonated with me the most. I really appreciated you talking about this. And that feeling that I got was what was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I can take my experiences, I can take these moments in my life that I want to try to understand better and put them into art. And that vulnerability, that authenticity, it resonates with people. Even though none of them had ever modeled before, they were telling me that it resonated with them the most out of like over 10 projects that were presented, you know? So it really was that time in my life and my feminist background. It really grounds everything because I realize how powerful media is in continuing these systems of domination that we're all exposed to so unconsciously, especially now, you know? And I really seek to create content and projects that challenge the representations that we're taught that divide us, you know? So that's really how those two things are connected in my life. And going from like a women's studies background into film, it just seemed the best way for me to communicate these ideologies that I think are more important to push, like embracing difference, accepting yourself, being authentic with who you are, and going on that journey. The best way for me to communicate that was through film. So that's how those two things kind of fit together.
That's amazing. I love hearing about kind of like the motivation behind your filmmaking. But I think it's really interesting because you also do a lot of creative directing and hosting and on-camera talent work. So you've worked as air talent for Vice as a TV host, for Bell Media as a part of their really prestigious graduate leadership program, and also for The Shift as a segment producer and on-air talent, which is insane. That's quite the resume. So I think it's really
listing everything off.
Yeah, we're just when we were preparing this. When we were preparing this, I was like, the list's still going. It just kept going. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that you had so much experience and perspective from both sides of the camera. So I'm wondering, what's been kind of like the biggest adjustment for you for doing those different types of work and, you know, being in front of the camera, but also being the driving force behind making a film yourself?
I think they're connected again, you know, like I love talking to people, and I think hosting in a way is kind of like an extension of modeling. You know, I can be aware of myself on camera, and I just like talking to people. I love learning. I actually did an interview a few months back, and as I was talking, the guy's like, wow, you really like to learn. And I was like, huh, I guess I do. I'm going to run with that. I like that, you know, and I think that desire to learn really propels me in all these different areas. And when I think about doing stuff on camera, it's like it's a different side of me that kind of gets entertained, you know? I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can like put on cute outfits, do my makeup, and have conversations with people, learn something about people's careers, and get to really engage with the community and engage with people that inspire me, because that's really the types of people that I like to interview, you know? So I think those two things really allow me to kind of be all of me. And that's something that I love about my creativity and in my art and my practices, is that there's like so many different sides of me. Like I said, I get bored easily. I multitask like almost too much. I usually have way too many things going on, but sometimes certain ideas or concepts or, you know, visions that I have creatively aren't going to get properly expressed through a film. Maybe they'll get expressed through a written article. Maybe they'll get expressed better through interviewing somebody who knows more about it than me. You know, so it really depends on the kind of idea that I have. And then based on that idea and what I'm trying to accomplish, I find the best medium for me to achieve that. And if it's something that maybe I know really well, I'll do it. And if it's something I have to learn more about, I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. Let's like figure this out and let's like get it going. You know what I mean? Does that answer your question? Yeah, I feel like I went on a little bit of a rant.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
I would love hearing artists who are like that, like just kind of going for everything, because I think that's also, it's probably one of a really important part about being a creative and an artist is not being afraid to try and delve into a lot of things while it being very stressful at times.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear the difference between your time as like a segment producer working on The Shift and working with Belle to maybe even your experience as a filmmaker, like, because I feel we don't hear a lot of the times about that kind of TV hosting, you know, producing work. So what was that experience like? Did you know what you were getting yourself into before it happened? Like, did you learn anything about the process?
I definitely learned so much working for The Shift. It was like Kayla Gray's an amazing interviewer. So I learned a lot just watching her. She exposed me to a lot of her process as well, which was fantastic. But I think the difference between doing segment producing for some first show like that, where it's, you know, based, you have a certain time limit, you're interviewing people, it's a lot about like editing down the content. And I learned a lot about how to synthesize an idea when I have a lot of information in front of me, you know? So like when you do an interview with someone, it can be like 30 minutes and you have to get that down to 5 and you have like a week to do it. And it has to be covered with B-roll, and it has to, like, the turnaround time was really fast. So for me, it really like enhanced my abilities to tell a story in that way and to understand, okay, like you take out the like it gave me a better process, you know? And when I compare that to like filmmaking, I think it all applies to the same thing. It's all storytelling, really. Just a different way to tell a story. You know, you can do a documentary on somebody and tell their story that way, or you can interview them and tell their story that way. But at the end of the day, you still have to have your main points of what you're trying to hit, your main beats, the main, you know, things that you know will resonate with people. You still have to go through that process. It was just a different way to do it. And I think the team there was really fantastic. I learned so much just being exposed to that side of the media world as well. And being able to like research people and come up with ideas and see them come to fruition in that way. I love that. I love when I have an idea and then I like watch it come to life and I'm like, yes, I did it. Yeah, like keep going. You know what I mean? So it was a really great experience. And I learned a lot about storytelling in a different way when I worked there.
I have a bit of a question that I'm just personally curious about because I do stuff behind the camera, and so I wonder, when you do work in front of the camera, do you ever struggle kind of like letting go of the behind the scenes responsibilities when, you know, that's something you have to hand off to other people, when that's something that you're used to being looking over all the time? So do you ever have to like click off something in your brain when you're doing those things?
Honestly, sometimes like it's not always the best. So I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do like an interview or like a video thing, and I'm like, okay, what's the lighting setup, what's the background gonna be, where is it gonna be, show me the studio space. Like my mind just goes there. So like, yes, definitely. But the cool thing too about the shift was, again, I got to do, like, when I produced, especially the stuff I fronted, all the pieces I fronted except for I think one, I had like creative control over it. So I reached out to the person, I did the research, I picked my interview questions, I picked the locations, I did the shot list, I edited the piece, and I finalized it. So I was a part of every stage. And I haven't done.
Good for you. Oh my
I actually am going to be doing an interview.
That's amazing.
So impressive.
It's my job at the time, but I actually have an interview coming up, and I'm not going to be editing it. I'm not going to be doing anything behind the scenes. I'm going to kind of get to help them pick the shots, but it's really just me fronting the piece for this next interview that I'm going to be doing. So we'll see. You know, I understand, again, it's like what I said with Gray Area, where like I learned that I'm capable of doing all these things, but I also learned that I don't always have to do all the things.
Right.
You don't need to. You know, like sometimes having other people think about other stuff, it just makes the one job you have to do that much easier. Right. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way, you know, because I burnt myself out many times, just being like, I can do it all, I'm going to do everything, I'm going to do this, I'm going to direct it, I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And then at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I need to like sleep for like 2 months, you know, so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So actually, that leads us to our next question, is because of all this, do you sleep? What's the caffeine intake you have on a regular basis? Like, because it's, you know, there's so many things happening.
One thing about me, I can't drink coffee. I have like pretty bad anxiety. Yeah, I can't. It makes me so weird. Like I get get jittery. I get like my eyes get wide. I get stomach aches someties. It's bad.
Goodness.
Then I don't sleep. So I really can't drink coffee.
So what's the alternative? Just a lot of sugar?
What is the alternative?
No, okay. I'm gonna do a little like product plug. I swear I don't like work for them or anything. This is just my favorite thing in the whole wide world. So there's this tea called Cream of Earl Grey by David's Tea. It is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. I'm also a sugar addict, like complete, and I don't put sugar in it because it tastes so good. And I drink it almost every morning, and that's what'll keep me going because it's really highly caffeinated. But for some reason, the tea, and I actually like the flavor because I actually don't like how coffee tastes. I feel like people lie when they say it tastes good. Like, it doesn't taste good. It tastes so bitter. I'm going to be honest here. I like the taste. I don't know.
It leaves a weird aftertaste.
That's
I don't know. That bothers me.
I can't. Yeah, and it's. I don't know. I don't do that. I don't like it. So I drink that tea a lot, and then sometimes I'll have like matchas. I like those as well. But I'm also somebody who, like, if I don't get a lot of sleep, I'll fall asleep in the middle of doing things. Like I usually require about 8 hours of sleep. So
how do you do it?
You know,
what's the balance?
What's the secret here? Do you just like take power naps in the middle?
Intense Google Calendar
I think
planning.
the secret is that if I showed you my Google Calendar, every time my mom sees me, she like looks. Last time I saw her, I was like, I asked her if she wanted to do something with me. I pulled out my phone. She's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "That's my Google Calendar." She's like, "What?" She like shows my whole family. She's like, "Look at Keisha's calendar. Look how busy she is." I'm like, "Mom, give me my phone back. It's fucking weird." Like, you know, but it is a lot of like I've learned how to. And I'm not the best at it all the time with like prioritizing my time, and my time management isn't always the best, but I've learned different things over the years. Like for me, I'm a visual learner. So I have an agenda that I write in, and it's color coded. I have colors for different projects. My Google Calendar is color coded. My email's color coded. And whenever I have something, I have to write it down. If I don't write it down, I won't remember. And like that's happened to me before. So I'm like really make sure that I have a method to know how I work and how I can organize myself. And knowing the things I need to retain information, to remember things. Like I have to write everything down. Everything's color coded. I have my methods. I am very rigorous in planning my weeks. I also have a business coach that helps me with all my projects and manages a lot of stuff for me as well. So I have help. And amazing. I realized like last year, just before the film was going to come out, that I needed more people in my corner to help me out. So I got that help. And that's a really big part of it for me. I'm really not the best at managing my time. There are some days where I don't get enough sleep. There are a lot of days when, you know, I'm just too tired to do anything and I have to take a break and take a day. But my goal by like the end of the year is to have like a good system where I can actually rest on weekends and I'm not working all the time. So that's the goal. I hope it happens.
That's good. Healthy goals. Where did you find the help that you decided when you needed it? Because I think it's really tough to find people that you can trust and kind of let them take care of you. So how did you go about finding those support systems?
It's funny because my business coach, as an example, she was referred to me through someone. And a lot of it was kind of doing this stuff, like talking to different creatives in the industry. And then the way I got her was I was speaking to another filmmaker. Well, she's not a filmmaker, but she works in the film industry. And she was telling me about her business she started. And I was like, how are you doing all this? And she's like, oh, like, this is my like person who helps me. Like, you should contact them if you need that help. It was kind of like divine timing, in all honesty, because I met her just before the film came out, like just before it was about to come out. And I was like looking for the help. And I was doing a pre-interview for a panel that I had to moderate. And then in that conversation is when I discovered that this person existed and that somebody did a job where they just talk to you and help coach you through doing multiple projects. So with that, it was really, again, just talking to people and stuff. But in general, I think, you know, when you're on, and this might sound kind of hokey, but I don't care. When you're on the right path, I find, and when you put your intentions into things and you're doing things you love, the things you need will come to you. But you have to know what it is you need, because I wouldn't have known to get this coach if I didn't talk to this person about what they do. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm actually looking for that right now. And then they're like, oh, well, then hit them up, you know. But if I didn't even know I needed it and I wasn't being, you know, living in that authentic space of my creativity and understanding that this is the time I need this, I wouldn't even have known to ask for it, you know? So I think a lot of it is building relationships with people who are doing things similar to you and actually having a community and a network, and not just people that you're collaborating with. People think that like having a community or having a network means you gain something from people, but maybe it's just literally talking to people who are in the industry and doing what you're doing, going for coffee with people every once in a while and like figuring out what they're doing, what they're up to, and how you guys can like assist each other, not necessarily by working together, but just even being a bounce board, you know? And having those kinds of relationships where you can talk to people about what you actually are doing and what you need and what you want for your career, and seeing how you guys can have that exchange, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it leads into something we wanted to talk about as well, and that is you have such a diverse network of connections with people from all walks of life, very different backgrounds. And I think a big thing that a lot of creatives fall into is they kind of start sticking with the people in their niche and they talk with people within their industry. So how did you break out of that bubble, and how do you build that sort of authentic relationship, which you really put a lot of focus on when it's not just fully utility based? And I think that's really respectable. So how do you go about managing that when the industry, there is a lot of, you know, I need you for something, therefore I will interact with you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about like knowing, I keep my eye on what people are doing, you know, and when I see somebody just doing something that I admire, I feel like maybe there could be some sort of, you know, connection there, I make the effort. I literally will be like, hey, I really like your work. Do you want to connect? Like one of my friends, I have a filmmaker friend, and him and I literally connected because he reached out to me one day. He's like, hey, I like what you're doing. I'm like, I like what you're doing. Like, let's have a Zoom call. And then it started this like really great friendship, and him and I are like friends to this day. We kind of help each other out whenever we need it, and like we would talk. Like in the summer we spent a lot of time together just like talking and, you know, helping each other with applications for stuff. And it wasn't about us trying to work together. It was just like, I see what you're doing, I like what you're doing, and I kind of want to know more, because like, how are you doing all this, and like, where did your ideas come from? It's again that like desire to like want to actually learn about people and connect with people, you know? And I think a lot of people assume that networking or, you know, building a community is again this thing where you need to gain things from people, but sometimes all it is just trying to see where they're coming from and like understanding their story. Because like I always say this to people when they're like, what do? I just want to like reach out to this person. I'm like, yo, people love talking about themselves. Just tell them you literally want to hear about their project. How did you do this? They will be very, very thrilled. If they have the time, I'm sure they'll be happy to do it if you're genuinely interested. And I think, you know, the last like bit of advice I can say with building a network is also just being kind. It seems weird, but people, especially in the entertainment industry, are not always the kindest, and people like to use each other a lot, and they want to gain something from you. And kindness goes a long way. And I always say, even when I was as a director, especially when I was doing the film, like when we were doing Gray Area, and I'd, make sure I talk to everybody and talk to the PAs and talk to, it doesn't matter like what your position is. You're here to make this happen, and we couldn't do this without this person here. And I'd talk to people, and they'd sometimes just be like, oh, like, yeah, I'm good. How are you? I'm like, I'm good. Like, what's up? Like, let's chat. Like, I have a minute. Like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to do in film? How can I help you? Like, those types of conversations and those authentic and earnest moments you can have with people go a really, really long way, because you never know where someone's going to end up. And I know that I wouldn't be where I am if people didn't help me in some way or didn't extend themselves in some way. So when you get to certain places, it's important to remember to acknowledge all the people that help you bring your vision to life, that make it not just yours anymore, and now it's something you did together. It's a collaborative process, so
yeah. And I think it's great that we talk about this, because I think especially for youth creatives, this whole idea, networking is so important, as you say, in maintaining.
It also sounds really scary.
It does. It sounds intimidating. It almost like, at least even from my perspective, sometimes I feel like, am I just asking for too much, or am I just, do they know, am I approaching them as if they know that I'm just gonna, use them, or
it's like, are we being an inconvenience?
Yeah. Right. But at the same time, especially for creatives, it's so important. So, I mean, I think it's really interesting that it's kind of just that idea, go for it, and, value those relationships, and hopefully at the end of the day, you'll be able to say, look, this is what I did, and that relationship was well worth it,
And, like, the thing, too, is a lot of people get very upset by, like, rejection. Like, if you email someone and they don't get back to you right away, sometimes it's not because they don't want to, just because people are busy. And I think in the past, like, 2 years, I realized that, like, there have been people who've emailed me that, like, ask me questions about stuff, and it's like, I actually just don't have time for this. It's not that I don't want to, it's just I don't have time right now. And I think a big thing about, networking and building your community is kind of removing your ego aside and getting that, like, you might reach out to someone and they just, you have no idea what's going on in their life. You have no idea what they deal with on a daily basis. And sometimes people just can't or won't, they can't at that time, And for me, I'm a firm believer in, like, what's meant to be will be. If that person's meant to come into your circle and be a part of your journey, they will at some point. Maybe it's just not right now, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that. Like, put your ego aside a little bit and understand that not everything has to be about what you want in that exact moment. And when the time comes, it'll come if it's meant to,
Yeah, for sure. And, in talking about all the stuff that you do, there's one thing that we haven't mentioned, which is that you're actually the co-founder of your own organization, which is absolutely just on top of everything. So you are the co-founder of Collective Culture. It's a platform that celebrates BIPOC and creative voices, provides resources to them. You guys do panels and interviews. It's absolutely incredible and clearly very needed. So we appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
So what was the process of creating that? And, what were the experiences that you had a part of the industry in so many different hats, maybe informing your view of being like, this is needed right now?
Well, I started Collective Culture when I was in university, when I was doing my undergrad at Concordia. And how it started was I was in class and we're learning about, like, feminism and critical race theory and, like, trans experiences and all this stuff. And I'm like, particularly in the race classes, I'd look around and I'd be like, okay, like, I'm one of 3 Black people in this room, and everyone else is white, and we're learning about racism, and a lot of the people who could probably use this information aren't even in the room. So, like, this makes no sense. And on top of that, like, don't get me wrong, I am so grateful for my education. I love academia. Like, I am so excited to go back at some point. I want to, like, get my master's and, hopefully get my doctorate one day. That's a goal I've always had. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, I love the space. I love, like, learning. I love thinking about ideas and concepts in these ways. Like, I love theory. I like that stuff a lot, but it's really exclusionary. Like, the language is unnecessarily exclusionary, and the concepts, it's almost like, sometimes I feel like when you read papers, it's like, who are you writing this for? You guys are just like, can I say something? Okay, I won't say it. You guys are just like you know,
No, say it.
can I say it? Okay. Like, they're like circle jerking each other sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, who is this for? You know what I mean? Like, why are you guys like talking like this? Like, the people who need this can't even understand what you're saying. I can't even understand what you're saying. And I've been studying for 4 years. Right. You know? So, and again, it's needed. But at the time, I realized that there wasn't spaces that were having these conversations in these palatable ways. And that was like, okay, I'm in Montreal. I know people want to talk about this stuff. So how can we create a space that will do that? And that's really what started Collective Culture. In addition to that, it was also like, if you look at the platform itself, we don't really focus on like, you know, as an example, when Trump was in office, there's not one thing that we wrote about that had to do with Donald Trump. For me, I'm not interested in rehashing our oppression in that way. I'm not interested in, you know, talking to white people and explaining to them how racism works and this is what they need to do. Like, I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is celebrating and amplifying people of color and our stories and our voices in a way that makes us feel good. And yeah, sometimes those conversations are going to be heavy, but it's for our community. And I know that the work to explain things to white people, to explain things to men, to unpack that stuff is really important. It's just something that I don't necessarily want to take on the responsibility of doing, because so many people are doing that work and it's needed, you know. But Collective Culture is really a space that I feel like filled this gap that wasn't, you know, being filled at the time. And I wanted to create something that would allow me to also express myself creatively and to collaborate with other people. Because I found I was like, oh, I want to like do these different projects, but there's no platform for me to do it on. So like, oh, let's just create one, you know? So that's really how it came to be.
Love the mindset of just, I'll do it myself. I wonder, being in a leadership role, how is it to, like, how did you go about navigating kind of having that position of authority while being the head of an organization that's approaching such an important topic? Were there any bumps in the road or trial and error or things that you wish you'd known before stepping into that position?
Honestly, there's not much I wish I knew before, because I've learned so much from it. And I think for me, what Collective Culture represented when I started is very different to what it represents now for me. When I started, it was something that, you know, again, kind of wanted to fill this void with, but I wanted it to be a platform that I could connect with the community with, and I could create, and I could, you know, learn new skills. Like, as an example, I learned my first kind of introduction to event moderation was through Collective Culture, and the person that I co-founded it was like amazing at moderating. Still one of the best moderators I think I've ever experienced. And they were just so inspiring to be around creatively. And I also at that time wanted to learn graphic design. So I was like, okay, cool. So we have all these events. I'll just do all the graphics for this and I'll teach myself how to use these softwares, you know? So it was really an opportunity for me to like learn new skills, get some exposure, meet people, and have a space to collaborate in a way that I liked and that I wanted, and could bring other voices in without it feeling like very restricted. Because I find sometimes that happens when you collaborate with people. And now it's kind of turned into something that I want to give those opportunities to other creatives. You know, we have a lot of writers on the team now, and I say to them all the time, it's like, hey, what do you, like, Keesha, what should we write about? Like, well, what do you want to write about? Like, what are you interested in right now? Okay, you're interested in this? Okay, write a pitch, show it to me, and then we'll go from there. If it's in line with what we're doing on the platform generally, like, do it. You know, I want it to be a space for people to authentically grow creatively, because that's what it gave me. And having that kind of shift was really empowering for me as a leader, because I realized that, like, now that I had that opportunity, I can give this to other people so that they have that room to, you know, maybe one day go write for a much bigger publication. And Collective Culture kind of served as this, you know, bridge for them to figure out what they needed to evolve with creatively. You know what I mean? So I think there's not much that I wish I knew before. I think it gave me all the things that I needed to learn, and I'm still learning from it. You know, it's a really important part of my career and a part of my life. And I'm really grateful for all the people that allowed it to grow into what it's grown into now. So
yeah. And what do you see the vision of Collective Culture becoming? Is there any, you know, any kind of thing that you want it to be, or maybe even in your own work, is there something that along the same lines you'd like to achieve in the future, or try and change about the industry? Because there's clearly a lot of change that's needed. So any ideas about that?
I think Collective Culture right now, it's always been something that's reflective of the things I'm kind of like figuring out in my life, or things I'm trying to work through. And I'd love to see it become a platform that allows more people to be a part of it, and allows more people to kind of express themselves creatively, to bring in more voices. But I guess the thing with that right now for me is that that requires a certain level of energy that like I don't have right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of allowing it to like grow organically with the people who are on the team. And right now there's a focus. We're trying to develop some new content that's going to be coming out soon. We have some events that we're going to be planning for later in the year. And I think the pace of it has slowed down a little bit, which is great because it allows us to really think about what we want and the intention we want to put behind it. But I think long-term collective culture will always be a space for people to come who want to create and who have stories to tell and maybe who don't have other places they feel welcome to do that in. And what that looks like definitively, I honestly can't tell you because it's already like where this has gone already is very surprising to me. Not the success of it or the reach it's gained, more so just how it's shaped itself. It's always been something that I try to do very authentically in the moment. Like, okay, this year I'm kind of interested in focusing on this type of stuff. So like, let's like do stuff like that. And let's find people who are also interested in that and collaborate with them, you know? So we'll see where it grows. That's kind of the exciting thing about having a platform like this, where you can kind of just like figure it out yourself and grow with the people who become a part of the journey for the organization and platform.
God knows we know that. God knows we know.
That's just how we're going.
Go with the flow. Go with the flow.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Best of luck to you. We're so excited to see where things are going.
Thank you.
You've given us a lot of incredible information, but just to end things off, do you have any specific piece of advice that you would like to give to youth artists who may not necessarily know where they want to take their creativity and whether or not that's in a professional direction or just keeping it as a hobby, or people who don't feel validated by the community that they're in to pursue something more creative? Is there anything at all that you want to say to them?
I think try stuff. You know, I even in this conversation, I've illustrated many of the different things I've tried that have led me to be here. And sometimes it's scary to just be like, oh, I'm like interested in writing. Let me just write and see what happens. Or, you know, for me, it was I'm interested in video editing. Let me like just find projects where I can edit and learn how to use these programs, you know. But my mom always says something, it's just as important to know what you don't want as it is to know what you do want. And I think that advice has really resonated with me throughout my career, where like I know now I don't want to be a color grader. That's way too meticulous for me, you know, but I wouldn't, it's not going to happen. But I know that because I tried it. And I think it's really important to give yourself that space to fail, and not even to look at it as a failure, but to try and find the lessons in failures. And I know people say that all the time, but you know, something I've been working through recently in my life is the power of your mindset when you do something and the intention that you put behind it. And when you really want something and you have a goal, don't let anything stop you from doing it. Like, it doesn't matter if it takes you 5 years to do something, 6 years to do something. You look at all these, you know, celebrities, we see all these talented, creative people that are in the media. They didn't just pick that up a couple days ago. They've been working at it for years and years and years, and we don't see that. You know, so don't be afraid to take time to perfect your art and to try stuff and to, you know, really hone in on what makes you feel good. Who cares what people think? And also, who cares if what you do when you start is bad? Everything is not good when you start it. That's not possible. Otherwise, what's the point? If everybody could just be good at something when they start it, there would be nobody that's exceptional at anything. You know what I mean? So I think it's really about trying things, being authentic in your journey, your discovery, and being kind to people, and also finding your community. That's the biggest thing. Be kind to people and build that network and that community of people that you can count on. And you can't do anything alone. So keep that in mind as you try things and as you meet people, and just remember to be yourself, because no one else can be you. I feel like I'm saying the most corny stuff like today, but honestly, they're real lessons that actually apply to my life. And I mean them wholeheartedly. Like, you are your greatest asset. Like, use it, you know? So I think that's all my advice. I said like 5 things. You said one thing. I'm like, okay, this and this and this and this, but yeah, that's my advice.
Well, Keesha, thank you so much for being here, for speaking with us. It's been so amazing hearing all of the work that you've done, and also just the insight and all the experiences that you've had. You know, it can be hard sometimes for even just us, for any youth creative, to get that kind of advice and ask for it. So I guess, you know, just hearing you speak so openly about everything is, I know, going to be so helpful, even helpful to us. So eternally grateful for you being here, and it's so fun chatting with you. So thank you very much. And if you guys would like to check out any of Keesha's work for Collective Culture, Gray Area, or any of her other projects, we'll have all her links in the descriptions of everywhere that you're watching or listening to this too. So please make sure to go show her some love. And with that being said, thank you so much for listening and watching to this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, guys.